Take on Me is a good movie, and capstone to the Chuunibyou franchise from which it spawned. But while the romantic resolution is good, the more I think about it, the thematic resolution leaves a bit wanting. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that the series continually portrays a strict binary between Chuunibyou and normalcy despite all evidence to the contrary. The reveal that Rika has deep-seated fear that if she abandons Chuunibyou, Yuta will no longer love her is a sound dilemma, considering that as long as he's known her, her delusions have defined her character. If she isn't Chuunibyou, then who is she? And will Yuta still love the person she becomes? This reveal does a lot to retroactively recontextualize the very slow and gradual advancement of the relationship throughout the show. It's a tantalizing question that I kind of wish was explored throughout a third season rather than being quickly addressed and resolved in the final act of a film. While the film delivers on the romantic resolution fans had always wanted, and quite gloriously so, I think it stumbles a bit on the thematic front by framing the choice as whether to give up Chuunibyou or not. The ultimate conclusion the narrative arrives to is that Yuta reassures her that he will love her no matter how she changes, which, while very sweet, isn't so much an answer as it is pushing off the question for an arbitrary later date that they don't actually have to show. It strikes me as non-committal, and the reasons are clear. Being Chuunibyou is Rika's character. We, the audience, can't imagine her without it, thus the narrative frames it as something that can be kept for the time being, while assuring the viewer that it is something to be grown out of. But the more prescient question becomes, does it have to be? While watching the series, and indeed this finale film, I kept waiting for what was in my mind the obvious answer, a compromise between the imagination and the mundane. As the critically underappreciated LEGO Movie Part 2 once told us, abandoning what you love in the pursuit of maturity is ironically one of the most immature things you can do. And we even see this in Chuunibyou itself. Nibutane's extreme efforts to hide and distance herself from her Chuuni past are routinely the cause of her own unending frustration, when it's repeatedly demonstrated that basically everyone already knows and nobody really cares or judges her for it. You shouldn't have to give up the things you love to become a better person. Rika derives great enjoyment from her delusions, from the narratives she invents in her mind, but these aren't what holds her back from maturing necessarily. It's more her refusal to interact with the world around her more appropriately when required. I think a better moral would have been that it's okay to be weird, to be creative, to be expressive, but that there's a time and place for such things. There's no reason one should have to abandon Chuunibyou entirely. Everyone has their eccentricities, everyone has their special circumstances, and the world isn't always so accommodating. But that doesn't mean you have to throw out the parts of who you are to live a good life. By finding people who accept you, finding a place where you belong, you can allow yourself to be yourself. Weirder people than Rika Takanashi have found success and comfort, and it feels strange to me to draw such a boundary. The message we were left with at the end of Season 1 is that everyone copes with stress in their own ways, and that's valid. While we have a deeper understanding of our lead characters by series end, ultimately that message has not progressed to its logical conclusion and continues to be put off to an unseeable future. And I just think a compromise would have fit the themes of the narrative better. Just as Yuta gradually becomes more willing to indulge in Rika's delusions, so too should Rika gradually learn to be responsible when the situation calls for it. I can think of little as beautiful in a relationship than that kind of symbiosis. Two people forming that kind of compromise and rubbing off on one another, bringing out the best of both of them. But what we're left with is something of a hollow conclusion thematically. Does Rika have to give up Chuunibyou? The narrative says, yes, probably, eventually. But I say different. I say Rika should walk Robert Frost's path least traveled and work on her personal shortcomings whilst remaining true to who she is. The film kind of dodges the big question because it can't bear to give us a Rika who doesn't match our image of Rika. It can't show us a Rika who has abandoned Chuunibyou permanently because that would be a betrayal of what we find endearing about the character. But this is the result of a problem the series invented for itself by rigidly adhering to a binary. There is another path. There is a compromise. And as good as the film is, I think it really missed an opportunity to demonstrate that. You can be a functional adult while still having all your same weird interests, and I would love nothing more than for Rika Takanashi to grow into that kind of person. In my mind, that's the future they should strive for. You cannot always be torn in two. You will have to be one and whole. For many years, you have so much to enjoy, and to be, and to do. Zeke Freak out. Ciao ciao for now.